Hey everyone, it's Scott Hansen from NFL Red Zone reminding you to watch Sports Ballers, the podcast that gets you caught up on everything Washington sports and beyond.
Podcast. I'm Cory Puffett, joined as always by Eric Meyer and Evan Ash, but today a little bit different because for the first time in more than 60 episodes, Eric is sitting right next to me in the studio.
Yeah, it's good to be back. Fully vaccinated, all the protocols met for that on Monday, so we're good to go.
Yeah, no, Monday was 2 weeks since your second dose. Last Monday was 2 weeks since my second dose, so really exciting stuff there. I'm sure that our three listeners will be very happy not to hear the computer voice from you. Unfortunately, Evan, we still got the computer voice from him. He is going to be fully vaccinated and 2 weeks removed from that on Friday, but he lives in Atlanta, so it'll be a little while before all of us are together. But we do what we can, and we got a full show for you guys here today on episode 145. I'm not even going to try and give you guys a preview because we just got so much to get to. So let's jump right into the NBA. First and foremost, we are in the midst of the playoffs. We already had the play-in tournament, so to speak. Not exactly a tournament, but, you call it what you call it. And let's go ahead and just quickly run through some of these series. I mean, we'll talk a little bit about each of the 8 series, starting in the East with the 1 versus 8, the Sixers and the Wizards. Game 1 is in the books.
So Eric is out of his room, and then somebody's still calling.
Yeah,
this time calling Cory.
Somebody's calling me.
Can't blame me this
That's
time.
me. I'm just such a popular guy. Anyway, so the Sixers are up 1-0 on the Wizards, a 125-118 victory. The Wizards put up a fight. What would you say, Eric, are the chances of Washington winning a game in that series?
I think it's pretty good that they take one. I mean, they'll have 2 shots at home. They've still got 2 very good guards. Bradley Beal's one of the best scorers in the league. Russell Westbrook's one of the best playmakers in the league. And, yeah, this last game they kind of got a little bit fortunate with Joel Embiid getting into some early foul trouble, which kind of kept him in it because whenever Embiid was on the floor, he was just dominating every single Wizards big man and practically would have had them all fouled out if he hadn't himself gotten into some foul trouble. So I think the Sixers will be a bit more diligent about protecting him from some of that foul trouble, and he'll probably try to play a little bit smarter as well. But like I said, the Wizards have the ability to score a lot of points, so they can get hot in a game and get a win here. I mean, it's not going to be a competitive series, I don't think. I think at most it'll be 1 win for Washington, but I think they could possibly snag one. I'd give them a 60% chance of avoiding a sweep.
That's pretty decent. I mean, the 118 that they scored is the second highest losing total so far in the playoffs. Granted, it's early, but...
Yeah, and the Wizards don't play any defense, so it's sort of par for the course. This is how they win and lose with high-scoring games. So if the Wizards are scoring 100, they're getting their asses kicked. So, I mean, this is how they have to play. But like you said, they competed on the road against the number 1 seed, against a team that's got a lot of statements to make given that their trust the process crap that they've had over the last 7 years and the amount that Joel Embiid kind of runs his mouth, which is charming to some extent, but to some they find it annoying. So they're definitely going to get the Wizards' best shot. There's no doubt about that, but they're just going to be too talented in the end. But I'm still proud of the Wizards for being there, and I think they'll compete their asses off the next 3 games. I just don't think they're going to win very many of them.
Not a whole lot else to talk about with that series, really. Let's go ahead and move on to the 2-7, where the Brooklyn Nets are already up 2-0 on Boston. They won the first game by just 11 points before absolutely destroying Boston by 22 in Game 2. And now they're set to shift over to Boston. So first thing, Kyrie had some comments. He played for Boston for 3 years, and now or 2 years. He's heading back to Boston, and the whole world knows, as they said in the press conference, about the subtle racism and sometimes not so subtle racism that players have to deal with in that city. I mean, as Orioles fans, you guys are very well aware of everything that happened with Adam Jones and hearing people shouting the N-word from the crowd at Fenway Park. You've seen it in the Boston Gardens with the NBA games. Any thoughts on Kyrie's comments?
Well, as well as we do, because CeCe Sabathia made comments about things that he heard from members of the Peanut Gallery at Fenway Park. So
he did.
You hope that part of it stays out of it. It's okay to sports hate Kyrie Irving because he picked up and left your town and he didn't really make a great effort while he was there.
It's also okay to dislike him for certain
for plenty of other reasons, for some other clownery, but obviously
you should never go there.
Once you go there, you've completely lost the plot at that point.
Yeah.
And I don't really know what else to say to that. I hope that doesn't happen, but as for this series, this is over. I mean, the Celtics had no chance as soon as they walked in the door. They were not a very competitive team this year, even when they had Jaylen Brown on the court. Now they don't have him. Jason Tatum can't do it all by himself. They just don't have anywhere near the level of talent that the Nets do. And frankly, their heart's not in it. It's not like they're some gritty team that's going to potentially steal a game by scrapping it out with the Nets. It's not going to happen. They're going to get swept.
If there was an argument to be made for the Celtics having a prayer in this series going into it, it probably would have been that, the big three of KD, Kyrie, and James Harden only played 8 games together during the regular season. They had a little bit of a shaky first half in game 1, but what have you seen from them since then?
They're going to be fine for the most part. I mean, again, when you have that level of talent and it's a huge talent disparity, it's going to win out. It could get more interesting as they play more competitive teams like the Bucks, like the Sixers, because those teams have bodies they can throw at guys like James Harden and Kyrie Irving, and they could cause a little bit of trouble for those guys, and that's when some of the chemistry issues that may pop up would pop up. But I've never doubted. These guys are vets. They haven't quite played together with all three of them on the court enough, but Harden's played with Kyrie, and Kyrie's played with KD, and they all are extremely skilled basketball players who, despite some of their personality flaws that we've discussed, all three of which multiple times on this podcast, they seem to be able to play well with others when they're on the court, as long as Kyrie's not having a meltdown or anything of that ilk. It just seems like there could be something where late in the game, it's close, they have a hard time scoring, KD wants the ball, but James wants the ball, but Kyrie wants the ball, and it could get a little bit tight then. But the biggest issue with this team is going to be their defense, and we talked about that all season. I think offensively they're going to put up points against just about anybody. It's just a question of can they stop anybody once they get to Milwaukee, or maybe the Heat if they can come back, but I doubt it. We'll get to that in a little bit. Or Philadelphia when that time comes as well, because I think Philly's going to be in the conference finals. I wonder about that because it's going to be tough for them.
I get the sense from the Nets that they want to be the type of team that, just gets through the regular season, however. And then when the playoffs start, they turn it on, and that's when they play hard. So, remember, sort of toward the end of the Warriors dynasty, I guess, they would kind of go through the motions, and they would blow out some teams, and they're goofing around on the sideline, and then other nights they don't look like they really want to be there. That's kind of how I feel about this Nets team. And now that the playoffs started, they're going to open up a can on some of these people, like the Celtics, who are ready to just pack up and go home.
Yeah, they've been ready to go, really probably since the play-in tournament, but they had to try. And Jason Tatum certainly wasn't going to just quit out there, which is what he definitely didn't do that when he lit up the Wizards in that game. But I think it's a little bit of a difference between Golden State and this team because Golden State had the championship pedigree. Like that that first year that KD was there, they went all out every single night that they were on the floor. KD got hurt and missed a few weeks late in the season. They had a little bit of a bump in the road. And then Steph Curry remembered, I'm Steph Curry, and they went on like a 12-game winning streak without KD, and they got the number 1 seed. They cruised into the playoffs, and they just were mauling people because they were focused and motivated. The next season was when they started doing sort of what you said, Evan, a little bit of coasting during the regular year, but they had that established as we have the idea of what to do. We know what to go to. We know what works. We know how to be a championship team because we've done it before. The Nets don't have that. And that's sort of what I said last year about the Clippers. We'll get to them a little later. But the Clippers last year kind of had that same attitude where it was Kawhi and Paul George, and they were taking every other night off, and they didn't really care. They were barely playing back-to-backs, and they were acting like a team that was a 2-time defending champ when they hadn't won anything yet. And you've got to build that chemistry and put yourself in a position to build the good habits before you start letting some bad habits potentially creep in. Because if you don't have that established base of this is what we do come crunch time, you're going to be screwed when you get to the postseason because other teams are coming at you every night.
So we'll see if that comes back to bite the Nets later on in the postseason, but it sounds like you don't think that that's going to be an issue in this series.
Certainly not. And with the Nets, I honestly do believe that this was not just simply we're going into cruise control mode. It was more about there were legitimate injuries. I mean, Kevin Durant's coming off a very serious injury, and he had his share of issues this year early on with some COVID protocol things, and then, of course, he missed 2 months with the hamstring. He's going to get banged up a lot. I mean, he's 32 years old. He's got a lot of wear and tear on him. James Harden, for the first time in his career, missed significant time due to an injury. And
yeah, it's not so much about criticizing the Nets for doing that. It's understandable, but still, that does mean that they haven't been able to build that team chemistry in the same way that some other teams would have.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, so we'll see if it plays out later. Again, the bigger issue, I think, is going to be they can't defend the rim.
So as they get set to head back to Boston, I believe they're planning to have like a 25% capacity crowd for Game 3, but close to full capacity for Game 4. I'm not sure why the disparity in those two games.
What's going to change in 2 or 3 days?
I don't know. But that's what I saw.
I mean, that's like the Rangers having full capacity opening day and then 50% the next night.
Yeah, but in reverse.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it makes just as much sense. Like you said, what's going to change in 2 days?
Hey, man, they got to do what they got to do, I guess.
Moving on to the 3-6 series in the East, the Bucks are up 2-0 on the Heat. Pretty tight game in Game 1, went to overtime, 109-107 was the final score, and then the Bucks obliterated them by 34 in Game 2. What can the Heat do, if anything, to slow down Milwaukee?
They have to hope they don't shoot as well from 3. Which they're not going to shoot that well for the rest of the
series.
series.
The guy who went like 6 for 8 from 3, I don't even remember his
Bryn
name.
Forbes.
I never heard of him before.
Well, Bryn Forbes is one of the best off-the-bench three-point shooters in the NBA, so he can do stuff like that. But it's also the fact that Pat Connaughton was hitting all his threes, and Dante DiVincenzo, White Dante, was hitting all his threes, and Chris Middleton was doing his thing. Now, Chris Middleton is consistently a very good player, and Giannis is obviously Giannis, but Game 1, they kind of made a mess of things a little bit. Giannis had a terrible game. But so did Jimmy Butler, and I think that's sort of what worries me the most about the Heat and their potential to come back is Jimmy's not playing at the level he was last season in the bubble. Now, he's a superstar player, so he's very capable of turning it on, but it's going to be hard for him because he's the main focus of the defense, and as I've said about the Bucks, they have the ability to throw multiple bodies at him. He can be defended by Chris Middleton or Drew Holiday, and Giannis and Brook Lopez do a good job of protecting the rim. The other guys are going to have to step up, and you mentioned this maybe last week, I think, about Tyler Hero sort of being a little bit caught up in the glitz and glamour of South Beach and not really focused on his game, and that's shown in this series because he's been horrible in the first 2 games, and Duncan Robinson hasn't had great production. I just think the Bucks are a better team this year than they were last year by a decent margin, and that margin really shows up in the postseason because Eric Bledsoe trading him out for Drew Holiday was such an enormous boost because he's a much better defender and he can actually shoot the ball from the perimeter, which is something the Bucks definitely need to surround Giannis with, given the fact that he's got his own shooting woes. And then there's Giannis, of course. I think that Game 1, it felt like they kind of had to get a little bit of a monkey off their back because Giannis was bricking free throws. He got called for a 10-second violation at the free throw line, which is something I have never seen actually called in the NBA.
I've never heard of that.
How does somebody take 10 seconds to shoot a free throw anyway?
Well, he actually took 13, which is why he got called. Like, the NBA, the refs never call this because they don't even think they have to, but the ref probably noticed the previous 6 or 7 free throws. Wow, he's taking a long time. I'm actually going to count this time. And he even gave him an extra few seconds. Like, you could see him basically, not really using a clicker. It's not like an umpire, but he was using some type of hand motion to keep count and keep timing there. And he eventually said, all right, enough's enough. And, of course, that's one of the free throws Giannis made because he called it mid-release and it went in. It's like, well, that's awkward. So hopefully that doesn't happen again to Giannis. There were some complaints about the call, but it's the right call. And the reason the violation exists is so that people can't just stand up there for an hour and a half. Let's get the game moving. There's got to be a little bit of concern for the people watching at home. So, but beyond that, though, they came out and played their asses off in Game 2. I'm not going to go as far as Charles Barkley and say that the Heat are going to get swept because the Heat are a really good team. They're a gritty team, and Eric Spoelstra is a very good coach, and he could make some adjustments. But I just think that they've met their match this season. I didn't really think that Miami was going to win this series, but the intrigue was there just because of the bubble matchup last year and what happened to the Bucks last year when they not only got beat, they got destroyed by the Heat in that series. This year, it's a different ballgame.
And then the final matchup in the Eastern Conference is the Atlanta Hawks and the New York Knicks. The Knicks are actually decent this year. Yeah. First time in a minute we've been able to say that. The Hawks did win Game 1. Close game, 107-105. I didn't watch the game. Maybe there's something of interest to talk about with the game itself, but the question I have for you, Eric, is why exactly is Trae Young a villain now?
Well, he might be a villain in Madison Square Garden. I don't know if he's a villain everywhere else.
Well, yes. So specifically to Knicks fans.
He went in there and he played well, and he was talking smack to the crowd, which is always something that's going to get the MSG crowd riled up, especially Spike Lee and company. I mean, we've seen
if he's playing well, though.
Sure, but it's a playoff game, and here's this little guy, who looks like he's about 12 years old, who comes in and lights you up, and he lets you know. He's bucking at you. He's giving you the shush sign. I mean, it's great. It's great theater. I'm glad it's happening. I'm excited to see what happens in Game 2, because I said this last week. This series is very interesting competitively. It's not all that interesting for playoff implications because one of these teams is just going to be tenderizer for the Sixers when they get through the Wizards next series, but that doesn't mean you can't enjoy the now and appreciate what's going on in this series, especially because Trae Young is an up-and-coming star in the league, and this is playoff experience. This is his first playoff experience, and if he goes out there and he owns Madison Square Garden, that's just going to add more confidence to him. That's just going to make him a better player down the road, and the league always could use better players, so I'm happy to see it. Now, the Knicks, they're a really tough defensive team. I'm sure they'll respond in Game 2, but the fact that Trae Young's made himself a force to be reckoned with and sort of pissed people off, I can't say it's a bad thing. Reggie Miller did the same thing. Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan did the same thing. It's the nature of the game, and you've got to go in there and be the villain sometimes because otherwise that means you're just getting your ass whooped.
This is the only game of any of these series that I actually watched. And I watched the last 10 seconds. So it's very exciting last 10 seconds with Trae Young hitting the game winner. I think the real villains here are the Knicks fans. The Knicks fans really get on my nerves. I can't take it anymore. Like the Knicks, you'd think since they suck so bad for, a century at this point, they would be the lovable losers and all this type of stuff. No, I root against them. Please shut up and go away. I hope they get swept. Just it's too much. The Spike Lee antics, I've had it.
I
Please
like
stop.
Spike Lee as a fan. In fact, I saw I think it was like last week that one fan for the Raptors got inducted into the Hall of Fame, and why not Spike Lee? Where is he?
Why is he on the court? He doesn't play basketball for the Knicks.
He's a celebrity.
You bought a ticket. Sit down.
He's a celebrity in the one of the two largest areas of the country.
So
I guess
he should run for president then. That's what the last guy. That's what his.
Can we please stop with the celebrities running for president? I've had enough.
Yeah, I think we tried that once and it sucked. So let's not do it again. But yes, Raptor Nav was a great induction into the Hall of Fame. He's been to every Raptors home game since they became the Raptors. So that's kind of
wow.
exciting.
How long ago was that?
90s.
Like
That's a long run.
96 or something
Yeah,
like
like
that.
mid-
He doesn't look that old.
Hey,
The picture I saw, he looked like he could be our age.
He's not our age. Trust me. But more importantly, Nav's got a lot of credit as a great philanthropist. He does a whole lot of charity work in the area. Like, he really is that guy. He's
cool.
the real deal. He's not just a fan that shows up at the games. And obviously, if you've watched the NBA for any length of time and watched the Raptors in the playoffs, you always see the guy in the front row with the turban.
Yeah.
That's him. But yeah, he does all that stuff. But that doesn't mean Spike Lee's not worthy either.
Right. Well, that's
You know,
real.
and,
Yeah.
and even Jack Nicholson, who's been sitting courtside for the Lakers since the 80s.
Yeah, sure.
You know,
He doesn't run on the floor.
Not typically, no. Spike is definitely the most animated of the three guys that we just discussed. But anyway, I think the Knicks fans are charming in some ways because they just never give up, which is adorable because they're just a trash franchise. But hey, they're good this year and they're thrilled about it, so good for them. I'm thrilled the Wizards are in the playoffs, even though they're not that good. We all have standards.
So give me a quick answer before we move to the Western Conference. Who wins this series, Hawks or Knicks?
I'm going to say the Hawks. They've taken home court advantage, and I think that the Knicks played a little bit above their heads just because they were the only team every night that was like, we're going to play hard-nosed defense, and some teams getting off a plane and playing that night when they just got in at 2 o'clock in the morning, not quite ready for that. Playoff series is different. Everybody's ready every night.
Fair enough. Let's move on to the West. The Memphis Grizzlies, 8th seed, are up 1-0 on the Utah Jazz after a 112-109 win in Game 1. Do you think that the Grizzlies can actually push the Jazz to a deep series and maybe even knock them out?
Yeah. I don't know about knocking them out, but I think this series goes 6 games at least. I don't know if it goes 7. 6 would be my prediction. The Jazz didn't have Donovan Mitchell in Game 1. He's their number 1 scorer. Hard to win without that guy, but you still got to give credit to the Grizzlies because they're on the road. They're playing the top seed, who is the top seed because they're deep. Because the Jazz don't have a LeBron James or a Joel Embiid or a player of that caliber, so they kind of win with their depth. So missing one guy still leaves a pretty damn good team. Whereas the Grizzlies, they're young. They've got John Morant, who's an exciting player. Dylan Brooks has really emerged as this ridiculously good defensive guard. I mean, he was giving Steph Curry all he could handle. Steph still scored a lot of points, but it wasn't easy for him by any means, and that's why the Grizzlies are here, because they were able to pull off that win. I think that the Jazz can't sleep on the Grizzlies at this point, and I don't think Donovan Mitchell coming back is necessarily just going to make this a cakewalk. I think that the Grizzlies are tough, and I think the Jazz also don't really have that go-to guy that can just take over and destroy a team by himself. So I think they'll definitely win at least one of their home games, and at that point, it's a tight series.
Do you think that there could be, should I say, what do you think will be the effect of the Grizzlies having to play those 2 play-in games? Do you think that that will have any impact on this series for them?
Not really, because I think that they're young and they've got fresher legs. I don't think that's going to be a problem for them. I think they'll be able to handle anything, especially in the early rounds, and I don't think that's going to weigh them down at all.
Were the Grizzlies the number 10 seeded team? Is that?
No, I think
that right?
I think they were the 9.
They were the 9 seed.
Oh.
I forget who they beat in the
they beat
first.
the Spurs.
San
That's right.
Antonio.
Yeah, and I think they were the 10.
Okay.
Yes, because the Warriors and the Grizzlies actually played in the last game of the regular season to decide who would be the 8th seed, and the Warriors beat them. And then they met up again, and this time the
went the other
Warriors
way.
did not beat them. So it's funny how things like that work out. But I'm excited to watch the Grizzlies play a little bit. I mean, I know that we talked about this being the Siberia series, but there's still good players on the floor. So if you like basketball, then you should check the series out. But if you don't, well, okay.
Then you're probably not watching any of these anyway.
Yeah, you might watch LeBron, but LeBron ain't here, so.
Speaking of LeBron, his Lakers are currently tied with the Suns, 1-1. Suns took Game 1, 99-90, and then the Lakers came back in Game 2 and took that one. Chris Paul did something to his right shoulder in the first game, I guess in the second quarter. The Suns ended up winning, but he did not play well in the second game and ended up getting pulled. I think one article I read used the adjective mercifully in it. And they've been mum about his injury. They haven't said anything about it that I've seen anyway. What are your thoughts after Game 2 on maybe not specifically on the injury, because I don't know that you necessarily have any more insight than I do on that.
I'm not an insider for the Phoenix Suns.
But what does this mean for the Suns long term if he isn't right?
Well, then they're done. They can't win without Chris Paul being 100%. I don't know if they could have won with him being 100%. The Lakers are the better team. I know that the Suns won Game 1, but the Lakers are sort of a team that figures things out. And they lost Game 1 to the Trailblazers last year in their first round series in the bubble. And Charles Barkley was on there saying the Blazers are going to beat them. Lakers then won 4 straight. And then they lost Game 1 to the Rockets, the micro ball Rockets with Russell Westbrook and James Harden. And everybody said, oh, look out for the Rockets. They're giving the Lakers fits. 4 straight losses. That was that. So the Lakers definitely are capable of losing a game, especially on the road, because that's the one where you're kind of okay with losing it. They got the split that they needed to come back home. And if Chris Paul's not all there, that's just one more detriment to the Suns. I just don't think that they have the superstar talent. I know Devin Booker's very good, and he played well in Game 2, but he's not a take over a game kind of guy when LeBron James and Anthony Davis are on the other side. And we saw in Game 2, the Suns have no answer for Anthony Davis when he's playing aggressively. And I think that Game 1 was sort of a wake-up call, because that was a bit of a trend in last year's bubble, was against the Rockets specifically. Anthony Davis got kind of pushed around a little bit by PJ Tucker, and a lot of people said, you need to step up and play more aggressively, and he did, and they dominated. So that seemed to be what happened in this Game 2 as well. So if he's going to play like that, it's a wrap.
Remind me, does the NBA play a 2-3-2 home away format, or is it a 2-2-1-1-1?
It's 2-2-1-1-1.
Okay.
Now, the NBA Finals used to play 2-3-2, but I think they switched that to 2-2-1-1-1 as well.
Okay.
I think the reason why they did that was because they wanted to give the home team, they didn't want to have the disadvantaged team to have more home games at a certain point in the series.
Right.
Not just because that feels like it's not really an advantage for the home team, but also because of revenue purposes. And owners were like, yeah, we want the more money because we're the higher seed. Like when fans have to come to our barn. So
right, just in case the series ends early, then
yeah.
Right. No, that makes sense. So when you say they switched the NBA Finals, you're saying like at one point the NBA Finals was 2-3-2 while the other series were all 2-2-1-1-1?
Yes, it was bizarre.
Yes.
That is weird.
It is very weird.
Interesting. Okay.
I prefer 2-3-2 personally.
I prefer the 2-2-1-1-1 for the same reason. I don't think it's right for the lower seeded team to at some point have played 3 home games to 2 for the higher seeded team.
To me, it's
I guess.
There's
but
pros and cons for both.
Go ahead, Eric.
The pros obviously for the 2-3-2 is fewer travel days, which
makes the series it makes it like 1 or 2 days shorter.
Yeah, it gives you a little less time to wait between games. The constant change in venue is a little weird. But I also do believe that you shouldn't have more home games when you're the lower seed at any point in the series. That's just how I feel about that.
Yeah.
I just prefer, at least in baseball, the continuity. Maybe just because you can't play basketball back to back nights.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing is that with basketball, I mean, you're already going to be taking rest days anyway. So that rest day just kind of becomes a travel day. Whereas in baseball, you're used to playing 3 or even 4 game series, one day after the next. Often multiple series in a row before off day. So, I still think that the 2-2-1-1-1 is probably the better format, but I understand, having that 3-day series just to knock it out. Yeah, you're already used to playing 3 in a row.
It's a little different for basketball because when there's travel days, you probably have to wait 3 days between games instead of 2. Sometimes they schedule it that way. Whereas baseball, it's meant to be played every day.
Yeah.
So additional travel days, that makes things all kinds of crazy with pitching as well. Just think about it, like the time between Game 4 and Game 7 would be what? A full day's rest. Like you could bring somebody in and you have somebody pitch Game 4 and Game 7 and there would be no issue with rest. And that's just like, now you got aces pitching 3 games. It's like the whole point is to have a rotation, man. Like you can't just sit there and say, let me have my ace pitch 3 out of 7 games. Yeah. I know that Madison Bumgarner could do it anyway because he's just a beast like that, but that's what makes him special, right? Like don't make what makes Madison Bumgarner special turn into anybody can do this now.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Mm-hmm. So what if the Nets end up playing the Knicks in the playoffs? Are they going to put in a bunch of travel days, even though they play in the same city.
I'm sure they will. Just
Well, I mean, they have to keep things in line with the Western Conference.
yeah, there's.
Or what if the Lakers and Clippers play each other?
They
Yeah,
share
same deal.
They share a stadium, so
Yeah,
now,
gotta
yeah.
have travel days to go literally nowhere.
At that point, it's just a matter of keeping it in line with the other series that's going on.
well, the Clippers went out of their way to duck the Lakers, and now they're probably regretting it. So
They're about
Yeah,
to
we'll
duck
get to that in a
everybody.
second. But first, before we get to that one, we do have to talk about the 3-6 series, which is, I think, a good one. The Nuggets and the Blazers also tied 1-1. The Blazers took the first game by 14, and then the Nuggets turned around and took the second game by 19. So, in fact, identical losing scores. The Nuggets just outscored the Blazers from game one. To me, an outside observer, somebody who barely watched any of the first two games and has not watched any of either team through the season, this seems like the most exciting series of the first round. Do you think that this is the one that goes 7 games, if any of them do?
Yeah, I think so. I think this is definitely the one that could go the distance because this is two teams that don't play great defense, but they both have great offensive centerpieces and good offensive players around them. I realize Jamal Murray is out, which obviously is one less piece for the Nuggets, but they've still got other guys like Michael Porter Jr. and Aaron Gordon. They've got options to score even without Jamal Murray. In fact, they played really well after Murray got hurt. So I think it's going to be interesting because the Blazers did everything they could to bottle up Nikola Jokic as a playmaker. They basically said, we're going to take away all of your passing valves and we're going to make you score. And he did, but not as much as he needed to, obviously. Game 2, he said, okay, you want to play that game, I'll just score on you all day. And that's what he did. So the reason why these games are going to probably have big discrepancies in the scoreboard is because it's all offense. So if one team's red hot and the other one's not so much, it's going to get out of control. Whereas you're not going to see many stops on both sides, so it's more susceptible to seeing big margins. But I think the fact that the Blazers got one out of Denver, especially winning that first game, it does create an avenue for a longer series because the Trailblazers are tough to beat at home. They've historically had a great home court advantage. So have the Nuggets because of the altitude, among other things. So this could be interesting. I do expect the Nuggets to get one back in Portland just because I think the Nuggets are, in the end, the better team. But it's going to be a back-and-forth affair when you've got Damian Lillard and you've got Nikola Jokic. These guys are big-game performers. And, you know, Damian Lillard has had a history of not stepping up in the postseason at times. But when he's got a team that's competitive with another team, he's going to be a huge factor. It's not like he's completely out-talented here.
Eventually, you figure he's got to break through in the playoffs.
And he had a great game in Game 2. It just didn't matter.
Right,
The
yeah.
Nuggets,
I mean, Nikola
the Nuggets
Jokic
can score
went
enough,
off.
yeah. And the Nuggets as a whole, if you can't shut down their system, then they're going to torch you. So
Now, I don't remember specifically what Jamal Murray's injury was, but I know he had surgery on his knee, so I imagine
he's
like
done.
he is
Torn
done
ACL.
for the year.
Yeah,
Okay,
torn
so it was an
ACL.
ACL.
Yeah, and it was only a couple months ago. So
But apparently he got a warning from the NBA for his sideline antics in Game 1. What was that all about?
I didn't hear about this.
Oh.
Yeah, I saw some of his sideline antics. I didn't think they were that offensive, but he was getting animated over there. You know?
Apparently he received a warning from the NBA over them. So.
Okay, well, maybe he has to dial it back a bit.
Or send it. Maybe they meant to send it to Spike Lee.
And let's go ahead and get now to our final series of the NBA playoffs, the 4-5 series, where the Mavericks are up 2-0 on the LA Clippers, who, as you alluded to earlier, they basically tanked the end of the season to try and drop their seed down a little bit so that they could avoid certain matchups. And now they've lost. They lost the first game by 10. They lost the second game by 6. Neither of them are blowouts, but still, you've lost 2 in a row to open the series.
At home.
At home. You have to go on the road now to Dallas. I mean, would it be the playoffs without a Clippers collapse?
No, it wouldn't. The Clippers
And this was an intentional collapse, too.
yes.
Or at least it
Right?
started as one.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense either because if the idea was to duck the Lakers, I get the strategy of it, because if you want to position yourself to play the Lakers as late as possible, playoff series are tough on your body. The Lakers have an old star who's coming off an ankle injury in LeBron James, and they've got Anthony Davis, who had an injury this year and has a history of injuries as well. So they could potentially set themselves up where the Lakers have, they lose out to attrition, and eventually those guys can't go, and it becomes an easier series. But the problem for the Clippers is they decided that they were going to pass on the opportunity to play the Blazers, who they own. Like, the Blazers haven't beaten the Clippers in like 3 years. Like, they can't beat the Clippers because they simply just can't defend anybody, and the Clippers can defend them. And they decided they're going to play the Mavericks, who absolutely own them. Like, the Mavericks kicked their ass during the regular season. They gave them trouble last year in the bubble, despite the fact that Luka got hurt, despite the fact that Kristaps Porzingis got hurt. I mean, if those guys are healthy, I think the Mavericks win that series. And they come back this year, and they're better, the Mavericks are, and they say, hey, let's go toe-to-toe with these guys just because we don't want to play the Lakers. Luka Doncic owns that team, and it's worse than that. It's getting to the point where it's almost like LeBron James used to be to the Toronto Raptors, where not only does he own you, he flat out does not respect you. He just goes in there and says, I got no respect for your team. I'm going to light you up. I'm going to take I'm going to take 3-point shots in the playoffs in the fourth quarter off of one leg just because I know I can, and y'all suck and can't do anything about it. He's just absolutely lighting Patrick Beverley up, and he's bucking at him, telling him he's too effing small, among other things, all game. Just no hope at all. Because last night, Kawhi Leonard had the best first half of his entire life. He scored 30 points. He was lighting them up. Paul George played well, which is something that you can't always count on in the playoffs.
Different in the playoffs.
That is an unusual circumstance when Paul George steps up and plays well. And you still lost. And the thing is, they got outplayed the entire game. It was a wire-to-wire victory, basically, for the Mavericks. Or at least in the second half it was. Like, the first half it was tight. Second half, Mavericks pulled away. And it's just like, there was no point where I really felt, wow, the Clippers are going to win this game. Like, at halftime, I was like, wow, the Clippers are up 2, and Kawhi Leonard scored 30, and Paul George is playing well. Well, that's not good news for you because you still can't figure out how to stop the other guys from scoring. Nope. They're filling it up from 3. I don't think the Clippers are going to have a game like that again from Kawhi because Kawhi's never had a game like that in his life, and yet here we are. They're down 0-2 going on the road. That's a recipe for disaster. I think that even though the fact that the Clippers are considered on paper a much better team than the Mavericks, ESPN's BPI has them as like a 25% chance to advance at this point, which makes sense because you have to win 4 out of 5 games, 3 of which are on the road. And on the road matters now because fans are back in the arena. It's not like the bubble where there is no actual home or road. There is a road factor here. Yeah. And it's Texas. They're going to be there. It's going
to be packed in there.
It's not Boston where they're going to say, okay, 25% for game 3, and then we'll make it full capacity after that. It's going to be completely raucous in the American Airlines Arena, and I don't know if the Clippers are going to be able to handle it. They're definitely not winning both of those games.
The Clippers don't seem like a team with mental fortitude. Like, they seem like the type of team that would just wilt when it gets hard. So, like, if they're getting blasted in game 3, I feel like they would be the type of team that would, even though the series isn't over, they'd be like, oh, well, we're done. Let's just get out of here. They go through the motions in game 4 and get unceremoniously bounced. Like, I feel like they can't be counted on. I feel like they're a clown organization. I'm so tired of the Clippers. And of course, playoff P was playoff peeing down his leg.
Come from?
He gave it to himself.
He gave it to himself.
That's the worst part. Yeah, I agree with everything Evan said about. I mean, mental fortitude or lack thereof was on full display when they tanked to duck a team in the playoffs.
Yeah,
teams with championship mettle and the ability to handle adversity don't worry about who they play.
Yeah, because they feel like they're better than any of the other 7 teams in their conference, plus the 8 teams in the other.
Yeah, I didn't see Golden State ducking anybody, saying, let's try to avoid the Rockets because they're a tough team. No, they're like, yeah, we're going to beat them. We'll have to see them down the road anyway, so let's take it to them. The Lakers didn't even do that. They said straight up, yeah, we'll play who we play. Whether we have to go in the playing game or not, whether it's the Suns, the Jazz, or the Clippers or the Nuggets, whoever. We'll play who we play and we'll see what happens. That's why the Lakers are defending champions, and it looks like the Clippers are going home in the first round. It's insane. And it should be mentioned, a big part of the reason why this has happened is because Ty Lue's being completely outcoached by Rick Carlisle, which shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody. No knock on Ty Lue. He's an okay coach, but Rick Carlisle is one of the best in the league, and it kind of shows you maybe firing Doc Rivers wasn't the best idea. Maybe it wasn't all his fault.
That was going to be my one other question was, I felt like at the time it was kind of ridiculous that they got rid of him, but now you have to figure with hindsight, in addition to already feeling that way, you got to feel even more so.
Yeah, and the thing is, you can justify firing pretty much 75% of the league's coaches if you really wanted to. You could come up with a reason. The Celtics could come up with a reason to fire Brad Stevens. I don't think they should, but they could do it, and it wouldn't be off the wall. They underachieved this year, and it's been 8 years to get them out. That would make sense, but the thing is, you watch Doc Rivers go over to Philly, and he's kind of solved the Sixers, because the Sixers were this underachieving, trust the process crap hole of a team, and then Tobias Harris, who totally forgot how to be a star, suddenly he gets reunited with Doc Rivers because Tobias Harris was at his best with the Clippers with Doc Rivers. He goes to Philly and he wilts under the pressure. Doc Rivers comes back in and reunites with Tobias Harris, and now Tobias Harris is great again. And he's gotten Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid to figure out how to play together. That's something that people thought couldn't happen. One of those guys was going to get traded. James Harden was an option for them, maybe to trade Ben Simmons for him. And yet here we are, and the Sixers are a championship contender, and the Clippers are underachieving again. It's going to be one of the most pathetic things I've seen in a long time, where a team sits there and ducks a team by tanking against the two worst teams in the NBA and intentionally losing games just to get bounced in the first round. And I agree 100% with you, Evan. If they go down big in Game 3, if the Mavericks come out hot in front of their home crowd and they get up by 15, 16, 18 points, something like that in the first half, the Clippers are going to quit. That's going to be it. They're going to quit, and they're going to say, shut it down, and we're going to have to blow it up next year, even though we don't have any first-round picks until 2027.
I think that wraps up our NBA discussion for today. We spent a little more than 40 minutes on that, but 8 exciting
Playoffs,
series,
man, first round.
all with interesting storylines to talk about. So, this time next week, some of these series will probably be over. A few may still have another game or two to go. Before we jump into Major League Baseball, quick jump into some Olympic news. The Olympics are supposed to be coming up in a few months now. We're approaching summertime, and they were supposed to be last year. Obviously, the coronavirus hit. They had to postpone them to this year. And just this week, a major newspaper in Japan, in fact, one of the Olympic sponsors, and the second largest circulating newspaper in the world, incidentally, the largest is also in Japan, has called for them to cancel the Tokyo Olympics. One of the big reasons being that their vaccine rollout has been incredibly slow. A very, very small percentage of the population in Japan has been vaccinated. Now, there's already been discussion that they won't allow any fans from outside of Japan to come in to watch, but they haven't said anything about whether they would allow fans from inside the country. But, we're supposed to have about 15,000 athletes, and even more than that, judges, other officials, media coming into Japan. What do you guys think? Should they be really seriously reconsidering having the Olympics this year?
Probably. As much as I love the Olympics and as much money as it's going to make when they have the Olympics, it's a pandemic and a very serious one. And like that type of thing can't be taken lightly over, a bunch of silly stuff like money and, people running around in a circle. So they should certainly
People
consider
running
it.
around in a circle is patriotic, Evan.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you just put a carpet on your back with, some shapes and colors on it, and then, of course, like, what are we even doing? But they should consider it, but I don't think they're going to. I think I think Japan has spent too much money to have the Olympics. I think NBC and all the sponsors and everybody stand to lose too much money if they don't have it. I mean, I feel like they're in too deep, and the money is really what makes the decision in this type of situation. I'm still surprised they canceled it last year, to be honest.
Yeah, the fact that they moved it back a year came as a little bit of a shock to me, just given the fact that, like Evan said, it's all about the money. But last year they really had no choice. Everything was shut down. And it's sort of disappointing because Japan was on it when it came to protecting their citizens from the coronavirus, even when we didn't have vaccines. Like, they were one of the better countries to respond to it, but a big part of the reason was because they cared. Like, they cared a lot about protecting their citizens, and this is the flip side to that coin is if you're unfortunately behind the eight ball when it comes to your vaccine rollouts for whatever reason, and you've got a potential super spreader event coming to your hometown, it makes a lot of sense to say maybe we shouldn't do this. And I ultimately think they will do it because money's going to win out, and you're not pushing it back to 2022. They're just not going to do that. Maybe they should, but they won't. I think that they feel like this is their shot to host the Olympics, and they're going to ultimately go with that. But I hope it works out for everybody because, we're feeling better about it here because we're fortunate to have handled this vaccine rollout well. But not everybody has the infrastructure that we have. Not everybody has the situation that we have. So we have to be aware.
Geopolitical clout.
Yes,
right?
I mean, we have to be aware that sometimes we're the worst at things, but other times we can be the best at things. And this is one of those times where there's a little bit of an unawareness of what's going on around the world with this, where people are still really struggling with this pandemic and struggling to contain it and struggling to get their people vaccinated and protected from the coronavirus. So we have to keep that in mind because you can't sit there and say, oh, everything's opening up. What's wrong with Japan? Well, Japan isn't the United States. They've got an entirely different situation than us. So we got to respect that.
Yes. To this point, Japan's Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga has not given any indication that he plans to postpone it. The IOC has said that they don't have to make a final decision for at least another month on whether they're going to hold it. They can wait another month before deciding if they do want to cancel it or not. But it's something to keep an eye on.
I certainly don't envy the person who has to make this decision, right?
No.
Like, everybody's going to be upset with you, whatever decision you make.
Yeah, of course, these days, what the consequences will be for that remain to be seen because that can be hit or miss depending on who's supporting you. Evan, your Yellow Jackets are starting the ACC tournament tonight in baseball. You guys are playing Clemson in Charlotte.
Yes. So Tech's the number 3 seed. We open up pool play. So the pools are really strange. There's 3 teams per pool, and each team plays a game against the other 2 teams in the pool.
So it's basically like groups in like World Cup qualifying.
Yeah, but like the tiebreaker is the seeding. So like if everybody goes 1-1, then the team with the highest seed just advances.
That makes sense. I mean, the regular season should still count for something.
Yeah. So we finished 3rd, and we won the Coastal Division. They have divisions in college in ACC baseball. They're basically the same as the football divisions.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's weird, but so hopefully Tech does pretty well. We'll see what happens. I don't know where to watch the game. It's on the regional network somewhere.
So
I'm one of the few remaining people our age who pays for cable. And I get all the sports packages and stuff. So I have to scroll way down the dial. I'm sure it's on there somewhere.
So I take it's like 4 groups of 3 that like play, in their groups to then get to the final 4, more or less, in the ACC tournament.
I'm pretty sure that's how it works.
How did they divide them up? Is it like, the 1, 2, 3, 4 seeds are in their own groups, and then 5, 6, 7, 8, and so on? That makes sense. Okay, that's cool. I didn't know that was something they did for college baseball. I'm assuming that's how they've always done it, but
I don't know if that's how they've always
least
done
for a
it. The one
while.
time I actually watched the ACC tournament, there was talk about how they had recently changed the format to this.
Okay,
So
interesting.
yeah.
I like that. I like that format.
So it's in Charlotte at the Charlotte Knights Stadium, which is next to the Carolina Panthers Stadium right downtown. It's beautiful.
Nice. Yeah, I've been to downtown Charlotte. I mean, you know that I've been to Carowinds, but Kenny Tate, his I think his mother had an apartment in down there. So when we were down in Charlotte, we went over to his mother's apartment and hung out there. You could actually see like the lights by the Panther Stadium from there, from the balcony.
Okay.
It was really cool.
Yeah, I've been to a couple of ACC championship football games, and those were both in Charlotte. So had a fun time. Too bad Tech couldn't win either one against Florida State.
So let's jump into some Major League Baseball news. And since it's my week to host, I think I'm going to start with my Yankees, and then we'll get to you guys and the Orioles.
Just allow it to fester a little longer with the Orioles.
Fester just a little bit longer there, Evan. So pretty big week for the Yankees. Won 6 games in a row. We almost won every single game since our last show, but then yesterday things had to fall off. So last Wednesday, after our show ended, Cory Kluber wrapped up a no-hitter. Big day for him. Did it in...
He smiled for the first time.
He smiled for the first time.
Yeah, Klubot actually cracked a smile. He broke character.
But unfortunately, yesterday against the Toronto Blue Jays, after 2 hitless innings, in fact 7 hitless outs, Bo Bichette and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Got to him. The latter of whom hit a home run off of him. It was his 3rd home run in 2 days. Yankees ended up losing that game, and Kluber left after the 3rd inning with tightness in his right shoulder. And in fact, just a little while ago, I saw a blurb that he's expected to be out for maybe 4 months.
4 months?
I think it said 4 months. Maybe it said 4 weeks. I might be mixing
There's
up
a
my
big
timelines.
difference.
There is a big difference between those. One is 4 times longer than the other.
Yeah, one is until the end.
One
of
is the
regular
rest of the
season.
season,
So
and one
maybe
is
it was 4
still
weeks. It came up as we were already in the podcast, so I only got to do a passing glance at it. In any case, he's going to be out for a little while. He did win Co-Player of the Week last week, along with Spencer Turnbull of the Tigers. Both of them threw no hitters last week because the Major League Baseball is just obsessed with no hitters this year. I think we've already equaled the all-time record in a season, or else we're 1 short. It's crazy.
I looked up Kluber. It's going to be 8 weeks, 4 weeks of not throwing, and full 4 weeks of building his arm back up.
That's what it was. Okay. Some people were asking, was it a mistake for him to throw the entire game last week? But the thing is, he was very efficient. He only needed 101 pitches to get through that no-hitter. And he was working off of 6 days of rest yesterday because the Yankees had an off day on Monday. So, I don't think that Aaron Boone is wrong to say, that's not likely to be the case. If you can't handle 101 pitches and 6 days of rest, what are you doing in the starting rotation? You belong in the bullpen. So that ended a 6-game winning streak for the Yankees, but they've been hot lately, and it's been fun to watch. We are going to be without DJ LeMahieu for a little bit. He's on the paternity list. Luke Voigt is going to join him soon. His wife is expected to be induced by Friday. Some good news on the injury front. Zach Britton is going to begin a rehab stint in AA pretty soon, with the expectation that he'll be called up in June once he's made at least 4 appearances in AA. There's been no specific timetable for Luis Severino, but everybody at their player development complex in Tampa has been raving about his velocity. They say that the movement on his slider is fantastic. They think that he's close to beginning a rehab assignment, but the team hasn't narrowed down his return window beyond June to August, which there's a whole nother month in between those two. That's a pretty wide time frame to be predicting.
It's like when the cable people are supposed to show up.
but it's something. And then Giancarlo Stanton is right around the corner from returning as well. So I think
what's wrong with him now?
It was just like a little
He's
nick or
always
something.
hurt.
It wasn't anything too serious. He only missed a few games.
He's like a thoroughbred horse, right? This big muscly machine of a being, and then the slightest thing is off, and he's just shut down.
But yeah, so I mean that's pretty much been what's up with the Yankees over the past week. Definitely glad to see that Zach Britton should be back soon, and hopefully Luis Severino not far behind him. Congratulations to DJ LeMahieu and to Luke Voigt on them having kids, their wives having kids. So what's been going on with your Orioles?
Yeah, so let me just run down the list of all the games that they've won since our last show. All right, well, that's all of them.
Can you go through that again? I think I missed a few.
Yeah. So everybody sucks and really needs a one-way ticket just to the sun.
Not everybody.
Basically.
Not everybody.
Yeah.
Just like a few weeks ago when I was talking about everybody sucks on the Yankees. We want to find a couple people who I said let's not send them into the sun. You've got at least two guys on your team who you don't need to send
So
into
John
the sun.
Means has been good. He's got his ERA is like 1.79 or something. All the other starting pitchers have an ERA at like 6.5. Just giving up bombs left and right. They can't do anything. They stand on the mound and they look at the ball like it's the ball's fault that it's getting hit all over the place.
The ball didn't ask for you to throw it where you threw it.
Yeah. The ball didn't have to be a meatball and be launched 100 miles an hour past your head. Trey Mancini's the only person in the lineup who's hitting. Everybody else doesn't even know which end of the bat to hold, which side of the plate to stand on, to hit from. They have no idea. It's just a mess. Trey Mancini hit a home run today, and for some reason I got that in my head, like, oh, maybe we can make this 1-0 lead stand up.
We
What
couldn't
a
make
foolish
5-0
thought
lead
to
stand
have
up
that
last
was. As soon as I started thinking that, our starting pitcher, was it Jorge Lopez, who never pitches past the fourth inning because he gets to the fifth inning and can't find the plate. He made it all the way to the sixth inning with this 1-run lead and then gave up a 3-run home run and the game was over.
Normally I wouldn't depress myself this way, but I feel bad for you guys with no wins over the past week. So just, be happy about the last team that you did beat.
Who was that?
It was the Yankees.
It was my Yankees.
Like last Saturday, like 10 days ago, 11 days
I don't even remember that.
Yeah,
when
it was
did this happen?
They won
It was
by
a
one.
game where the
all the
Yankees
games.
went up 4-0 in the top of the first and lost.
Yeah, I mean, it was
Oh.
that was a shining moment for the Orioles in the month of May. It's been abysmal. I mean, it's bad though when DJ Stewart hits a go-ahead home run. You gotta win that game, man. DJ Stewart never does anything good, and he finally contributed to a potential win. And they puts the Orioles up 3-2, and the bullpen promptly gives up 6 runs. It's just unreal.
Great bat flip out of DJ Stewart as well.
Yes.
Like, yeah, I hit the ball, once. Flip the bat.
Yes. He absolutely deserved to flip the bat. He hit a huge home run until the bullpen got involved and things got ugly. So
Yes. So let's see who else is. The whole bullpen is terrible. All of them. Everybody sucks. Just that's their whole bio, their name, and sucks. That's it. So Cesar Valdez, the dead fish, was flopping over the plate. Now it's just cruising right down the middle to be whacked somewhere. Let's see. Tanner Scott doesn't know where home plate is. He needs a map. Somebody help him, please. He can't find the plate. Let's see. Adam Plutko, the poor guy who's been our long relief man. He had been effective, but since the starting pitchers, aside from John Means, have been so terrible, you need Plutko for long relief pretty much every night. So he's no longer effective anymore. Sean Armstrong's a bum. He can go. I can't even think of the other people.
Now you guys are dealing with some injury issues as well.
So Austin Hayes hurt himself doing nothing. I don't know what happened to him. He's back on the injured list. A hamstring this time. Ryan Mountcastle got hit by a pitch in the hand. He's day-to-day. He stayed in the game for a little while. I guess it's swelled up. Let's see. Pedro Severino in last night's game failed to block 2 balls in the dirt that allowed 2 runs to score. So, like, once your pitcher's already walking a bunch of people, not letting balls in the dirt get by you, just allowing runs to score would be helpful, but he can't do that. So it was Pedro Severino's failed block ball in the dirt that kept John Means' no-hitter from being a perfect game because he struck the guy out, but he reached on the drop third strike. First time in MLB history that has happened in a no-hitter, that the one base runner to reach was a drop third strike. Chance Cisco, the backup catcher, he can't do anything. He literally can't do it. He's not a major league player. He's just not. We've heard
talked about this. He's just he's warming, that area behind the dish until Adley Rutschman is ready.
He's not even doing a good job at that. It's still cold back there. Get him out of here.
Yeah, the one thing that I just simply can't abide with the Orioles is the utter lack of ability to have a catcher play the position with any type
catch
of
the
decency.
ball.
Because you're a team that's trying to develop young pitchers, and obviously the pitchers that we have suck and aren't part of the future other than maybe John Means. But you can't have it where some younger guys that we actually believe in are thrown to these guys because they will ruin those pitchers. You have to have competency behind the plate. And when you got guys who literally can't catch the ball or jump over the ball and decide, hey, there's a perfect game that I just let go through the wickets for no reason. I mean, this can't happen. You can't have crappy catching. It's just not okay. I don't care if the guy bats .050. Put somebody back there that can catch the damn ball.
Yeah, like last night, Pedro Severino, there's a ball in the dirt right in front of him, and the ball was slightly to his right. He decides he's going to backhand the ball like down between his legs, and of course it clanks off his glove and rolls away, and runners advance and score and stuff. So, like, that's just fundamentally unsound. You have to get down on your knees and allow the ball to bounce up off your chest protector and keep it in front of you. But no, Pedro Severino, you try to be cute and stuff, but Pedro Severino, you have to move your butt. You have to move. This is professional athletics. You have to be an athlete and move. But no, he's just going to let it roll away. And then he clanked another one like me after that, and he was kind of lackadaisical going to get it, and the runner came in to score. So it's good thing they already played today. I can't take much more of this team. It's just they just do dumb stuff on top of being bad.
Well, you talked about Austin Hayes on the IL with a hamstring injury after doing nothing, but hopefully whatever it is that caused that injury is less embarrassing than Zach Plesac's thumb injury.
Oh my God, he's on one of my fantasy teams.
Yeah, dude had a rough start
too. He ain't anymore.
The dude had a rough start, only lasted like 3 innings and 2 outs. Went to the locker room and took off his shirt so aggressively that his thumb got caught on a chair next to his locker. And he's avoided the need for surgery, but he injured a ligament or something in his thumb, and he's going to be out for the foreseeable future.
How? I mean, this is as bad as Sammy Sosa throwing out his back sneezing.
Or Marty that's involuntary. Like you can't help needing to sneeze, and
how do you sneeze that hard?
Some sneezes are pretty violent, man.
Yeah, like you can't really help that. It's not like Sammy Sosa went out of his way to sneeze more aggressively because he was frustrated about his performance at the dish. Plesac went out of his way to rip his shirt off as aggressively as he could because he was pissed about his performance and ended up adding injury to insult.
Yeah, or Marty Cordova when he fell asleep in a tanning bed and burned himself all up. Couldn't play. This is a real thing that happened.
So, it's a shame it happened, but, we've said this before. There's no woe is me when it's self-inflicted.
Nope.
Yes. Zach Plesac, who also acted a fool blatantly flouting COVID protocols last season.
That's right. Yeah, I forgot all about that. Jeez.
And like posted a video of himself while he was driving.
Yeah, this guy.
Like, why are you taking video while you're driving? Not only you flouted protocols, but you're also breaking laws while you're driving.
He's not good enough as a pitcher to be that big of a jackass. Like Trevor Bauer can get away with some of the clown stuff that he pulls because he's Trevor Bauer, but Zach Plesac, you're a nobody. Like, let's be real.
Oh my goodness.
He's a nobody who looked like he was going to be somebody, but is determined through all of his foolishness to stay nobody.
Last topic on the baseball front, which really doesn't have anything specifically to do with baseball, but it's more just like a feel good, we can laugh about this sort of story. So yesterday, May 25th, 2021, New Era announced a new line of local market caps. And then yesterday, May 25th, 2021, New Era removed said local market caps from their website after so much backlash from social media. They were ugly.
Could not believe it. Like I saw the Orioles one first, which is no surprise because I predominantly follow Orioles people, so those are going to be the ones I saw. And I was like, at first I didn't realize that they did this for all the teams. I just thought that somebody did this for the Orioles. So I'm like, dude, I'm not buying that hat. Come on, that looks terrible. It reminds me a little bit of the type of hats that like rednecks wear with the little buttons on them, where it's just like you put a little button on your hat that says America on it or some crap like that. That's what it looked like to me, and I was just like, that looks so cheesy and cheap and lame. I was like, there's no way in hell I'm buying that hat. And then I saw the Yankees one, and I'm like, oh, so they pulled this with every team. Really? Because the Yankees one didn't look any better.
So they each had for any of our listeners who didn't see them, and you can still find them on Twitter and everywhere, but they had, I guess, all of the area codes that are within your market.
No love for 301 in Baltimore, apparently, though, either.
Apparently not.
Thanks, guys.
Who has a 301 in
But
Baltimore?
like 301 is PG County, which is a little more Maryland, like Washington. Even though more people probably root for the Orioles because they've been here longer.
There's plenty of Orioles fans in the 301.
It's a DC suburb, so like, you figure probably, but like it also wasn't on the Nats cap.
It wasn't?
I think they only had one area code on the Nats cap. It was 202.
Yeah. Because that's DC.
Well,
right. So just 301
had...
was nowhere to be found, but I think the Dodgers had like 9 area codes on their hat.
But the Pirates didn't have any area codes. It was just blank on that part of it.
And then they had like other things on there, some which didn't even have anything specifically to do with the team. Like some of them had like hot dogs on the back of them and stuff. It was so weird. But the funny thing was that out of that, of course, what social media people will do. They will take it and make fun of it to no end. And my favorite one was the one I sent to you guys in our group chat for the league, where it was for the Cincinnati Reds, and it's got Tom Brenneman's face, and on the other side it says, "There's a drive in a deep left field by Castellanos. That'll be a home run, and so that'll make it a 4-0 ball game."
Yeah, the worst part about the Orioles one to me, and there was plenty of bad, was the fact that they had like the 1983 World Series champion emblem like on the left side of the hat. Might have been the right side. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
And I'm like, okay, at first I misunderstood. I was like, is this supposed to be some type of 83 champions hat? Because if it's just supposed to be an Orioles hat, why wouldn't you include the 1966 and the 1970 Orioles? Because they also won the World Series. Why is
those
it just
teams
this
were better?
Team? Those teams were better. Like I was confused by that. And then again, I see a crab on there, and I think they had some Maryland flag crap on there too, which
there was no Maryland flag.
Oh, there was not.
This was extremely lazy job by whoever put this together. It was a complete disaster from the very beginning. So they had the area codes. They had a 667 area code. Who has a 667 area code? I've never heard of that. Yeah. So there was that on there. They had state of Maryland shape and whatever. But the worst part was they had a picture of Edgar Allan Poe's face.
Yes, they did.
Who he looks like he's got this look like he's in the process of watching someone be murdered. He looks horrified and scared.
So he's an Orioles fan.
That's true. Yeah, he's watching the
Yeah,
Orioles
he
play
also
baseball.
wrote a lot of stories that
Understood,
involved
yeah.
people being murdered.
Yeah, but still, it was just
Yes.
such a
He
weird
was a very
choice.
troubled individual.
It was such a weird choice though, because it's like somebody sees that, they don't know who the hell that is. Like, it's just it's a face in black and white. They're like, who's that guy?
Yeah.
It's Edgar Allan Poe. And then the next question is, okay, why is he on your Orioles hat? Because most people aren't aware that Edgar Allan Poe is from Baltimore.
Just have Babe Ruth on the hat.
They wouldn't
Right?
get that either. They'd be even more confused. He played for the Yankees.
Yeah. So and the Nationals hat had 1776 on it, even though Washington D.C. wasn't founded until 1790.
Yeah, Philadelphia was the capital when the American Revolution broke out.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So
There's a reason why
you know.
the Philadelphia 76ers are the 76ers, not the Washington 76ers.
I mean, hey, the football team needs a name. They could just pick that.
Don't pick that.
Jeez.
Be the 90ers. What about that?
So, moving on.
Yeah, that was an unmitigated disaster out of New Era, and hopefully someone has been fired.
Moving on. Some less fortunate news. The Washington Capitals were unceremoniously bounced by the Boston Bruins 4-1 in the first round of the NHL playoffs. What is this? 3 years in a row they've lost in the first round after winning the Stanley Cup Finals. Basically, wasted the last 3 years of Alex Ovechkin's 13-year contract, which is now expired. He is currently in the process of working out a deal with the team without an agent. Nicholas Backstrom did this, 2 years ago?
It was last season.
He did so without an agent. So Ovechkin, everything he said seems he's confident that they'll get something done. He wants to retire Capital. But I mean, Eric, you watched the series. I only caught bits and pieces. Anything worth noting?
They were terrible. That's what's worth noting. My goodness. Like, they win game 1 somehow, and then game 2 and 3 they kind of gave away because they probably were in position to win both. And then game 4 and 5 they just got their asses kicked. It was a completely uncompetitive series for the second year in a row, which is the worst part. Like, they lost in 2019 to the Hurricanes in 7 games. That was in overtime in 7 games. That was a really competitive, I don't want to say heartbreaking series because we just won the Stanley Cup, but we were riding high off that and we figured, okay, I wasn't sitting there saying, oh, we're definitely going to win the Cup again, but I was like, it feels like we're liberated now. Like, we're going to be able to win playoff series and advance into the postseason and get deeper into the playoffs because we got the monkey off their back. Nope. Didn't happen. They lost that series. I was like, oh, man, that's disappointing. Then the last 2 years, just complete no-shows in the playoffs, losing 5 games. Last year to the Islanders, just an embarrassing effort. And then this year, even worse against the Bruins. I mean, it looks like their window's closed, which is fine. Like, you have to accept that the core of the team is older. I mean, Alex Ovechkin's 35 years old. He's still an elite player, but he's not what he once was, and he was injured coming into the playoffs, which is unusual for him. He's normally extremely healthy, but he suffered a late-season injury. He was clearly not 100%. And then the rest of the team, the younger guys that came up that were supposed to be sort of the in their prime core of the team, while the older veterans like Backstrom, like TJ Oshie, and like Alex Ovechkin sort of continued to be good and productive, but weren't quite expected to carry the full load of the team. Those guys have turned into complete basket cases. I mean, Evgeny Kuznetsov, he's caught COVID twice. Like, how do you do that when you're a professional athlete and you have strict protocols to keep yourself healthy and available? He somehow managed to catch it twice. This is after he got banned from playing in international hockey for like 4 years because he got caught doing blow on a boat, Thad Castle style. So he needs to get the hell out of town. I've had enough of him. Like,
at least it wasn't the remember the Vikings had that boat trip with Fred Smoot
and Dante Culpepper and all the guys. That was a hell of a story. But they're a mess, and I just feel like it's also hard to stomach, even more so because the Caps somehow managed to mess up winning a Stanley Cup by not retaining the coach that won it. Like, they let Barry Trotz leave for no apparent reason, and they easily could have retained him.
Well, the reason was money, which was
that's
stupid.
not a reason.
No.
That's a terrible reason. And they should have absolutely brought him back because it's like we finally won a cup with this guy. This guy has been the best coach we've had in a long, long time. Maybe we should keep him around. Nah, we like the guy that's coming in behind him. He's the successor. He sucked. He got fired after 2 years. And then they hire Laviolette, and he's an okay coach, but he butted heads with players. I mean, we had to trade Jacob Vrana this season because he couldn't agree with the coach or couldn't get on the same page. I mean, at that point, you're blowing up the core of the team that won the Stanley Cup. It's hard to win that way, and it just feels like, I think that they need to re-sign Ovechkin, and I think that they just need to say, hey, whatever happens in the playoffs at this point for the rest of his career, if we're able to win some and somehow make another run at the Stanley Cup, that's wonderful. But now it's about letting Ovi finish his career on his terms because he deserves to, and he should be doing it in DC.
Yeah. Quick note on tennis. We're still a little ways away from the U.S. Open. That doesn't get started until the end of August. But this week it was announced that the Hawkeye line calling technology is going to be used throughout the U.S. Open to make calls. So they're going to basically just get rid of all line judges. The Hawkeye technology has been used in tennis for quite some time. I think, Eric, you said before the show about a decade or so.
Yeah, it's been around since I started really watching tennis, which is probably back in 2008, 2007, like when I was in high school. So yeah, it's been around for a while.
But it's been used primarily for challenges.
Yes.
And so now they're saying they're going to be using it for the actual calls, so it'll give instantaneous feedback. There is a very small error rate, and supposedly most of the errors have been human error in how they, I guess, work the technology or something. I don't know. But it'll be interesting to see that without any line judges. It's kind of fun side note.
I can't imagine the error rate is worse than the human line judges when they made calls. I mean, that's kind of the whole point. But tennis's challenge system has always been the best in sports. I mean, if you've watched any tennis at any point other than at the French Open where they didn't even have it because they play on clay and the balls make distinct marks so they don't even have to challenge it because you can see where the ball hit.
Clay.
Which
it's just dirt.
It's basically dirt, yeah.
Yeah, just call it dirt. It's okay.
But clay is cooler.
But
it doesn't matter. The point is, if you've seen challenges implemented where they're resolved in about 15 seconds. They show a replay of the ball's trajectory and where it ends up hitting, and they do a really close-up of the line to see if it clipped it at all, and then they move on. And, again, like I said kind of before the show, the only reason it even takes that long is for drama. Like, for suspense watching on TV, did it land in? And so they show the whole trip, the crowd gets all hyped up, they start clapping and stuff as the ball's getting closer to the line.
It is kind of fun.
It is very fun. It was fun,
I like it.
I enjoy a good challenge, too, but... and the thing is, tennis also had it done right where if you win your challenge, you keep it. You get 3 per set. You get an additional 1 if it goes to a tiebreak and things like that. But it also made sense that the next step would be no need for line judges. Let's just do this instantaneously. And I think it's a good idea. I mean, I feel bad for people who are professional line judges because they're being put out of work. And to be fair to them, they do a pretty good job. It's not like Major League Baseball umpiring where every other week we're just complaining about them all the time, or when Major League Baseball is celebrating the fact that Joe West has umpired so many games, which is abysmal. It's nothing to celebrate because he's a horrible umpire.
That bugs me too. Yeah. Like, why are we keeping this guy around for half a century to just blow calls and throw people out of games and be fat and slow and can't move when you're in the way?
Yeah. I mean, just that's all he's there for.
You gotta go, man. I mean, this seems like it's really a symptom of all of Major League Baseball. Everybody's really old and really white and won't leave, just standing in the way of everything.
Yep. Mm-hmm. But tennis isn't doing that, so good for them.
Yes, good for tennis.
Yep. Last thing before we jump into the NFL, we are today a month away from the start of the 2021 Tour de France, the 108th riding of it. I missed the entire thing last year, which is a shame. So I'm hoping I get a chance to actually tune in and watch this year because it's always a fun event to watch.
I've missed the entire thing every year because
I know you have.
It. I trust your updates to keep me. I just don't know who anybody is either. It's just like I don't know who these people are.
I mean, I didn't know who anybody was the first time I watched, but you learn pretty quickly.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. Anyway, jumping into the NFL. Let's start with some player news. Starting with Aaron Rodgers. He had a pretty fun appearance on SportsCenter this past week.
Yeah, he went on there and he basically said the Packers culture sucks. And he said it's not even about any individuals, it's about the philosophy and yada, yada, yada. Which basically boiled down to, he gone. That's what I took out of it.
So, somehow Matt LaFleur did not have the same takeaway as you, because he came out of that interview thinking, oh yeah, I mean, I'm still not worried. We're going to get him back in the building.
LaFleur's got to
Matt LaFleur is lying. Okay? That's what he's doing.
I feel bad for him. I feel bad for Matt LaFleur. I mean, we kind of questioned his hire a couple of years ago because we thought it's just another guy that's rubbed shoulders with Sean McVay.
He's done a good job.
But he has done a good job. He's had a very good couple of years with the Packers, and here he is probably wanting nothing more than just to have Aaron Rodgers be his quarterback, and the front office is screwing it all up for him.
Yeah,
and he's probably just
it doesn't seem like there's any sort of a wedge between Aaron and Matt at all.
No, they seem to be on the same page. He straight up said he loves his teammates, he loves the coaches, he loves the fans, he loves the city, he loves all that stuff.
He loves Jordan Love.
Yeah, loves Jordan Love apparently. But he's not on the same page with the front office, and I just feel like it's an interesting situation because the Packers are not the type of team with fans who would just say, I get where Aaron's coming from. They will take this personally, and they will see this as some type of indictment of Rodgers' character because they've already done so. I mean, I don't spend a ton of time streaming Wisconsin sports radio, but I've heard rumblings about how radio stations that still take callers, which God knows why you would ever do that anymore, apparently the callers 9 out of 10 are furious with Aaron, and they're pissed at him. They think he's being a diva, among other things. I'm sure they have other choice words for him. That's when things are going to get really tough. It's tough to mend a relationship when the fans turn on the player. And Aaron doesn't seem to, I mean, obviously he loves his fans, but he seems to be sticking to his guns here.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
if there's anything to dislike Aaron Rodgers over, it should be that apparently he gave Kenny Mayne some bad advice on cryptocurrency.
I think that was a joke.
I think so too.
It was definitely a joke. But yeah.
It was funny.
But yeah, I did enjoy that last little bit. And shout out to Kenny Mayne.
Yeah.
Respect to him for all the years he put on ESPN. He's always had that dry sense of humor, and I highly recommend you check out the video he did with Marshawn Lynch when Lynch was a rookie. Because Lynch even mentioned that when he shouted out Maine on SportsCenter, where he said, you were kind of the guy that made people realize that I'm not a bad person. I'm not a bad individual. I'm a good guy. I'm an interesting character. And watching that video, it's like, yeah, he's having fun at Applebee's and Dave & Buster's of all places as a professional athlete. It's a lot of fun to watch, so I recommend you check it out. But yeah, Aaron feels like he's gone.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't seem like he's going to back down. And also,
well, the guy who messed it all up is Brian Gutekunst, the Packers general manager, or the current Packers general manager,
and the greatest name in sports.
Yeah, Gutekunst. Yeah, he's done everything he possibly can to screw this up, right? Like as a general manager, it's not just about moving the players around like puzzle pieces. It's about relationships as well. Like, you have to keep the people working there happy, too. So, if your Hall of Fame superstar quarterback is a bit of a diva, then you got to, massage his ego a little bit, right? Like, and that doesn't seem to have happened. And, the Jordan Love pick seems like it was, I mean, really the steel I-beam that broke the camel's back, frankly. So, I don't think this is a relationship that can be mended. I think it's over. And I'm just frustrated that Aaron Rodgers won't say, "Get me out of here."
I think that the one thing that they could do, which is fire Gutekunst, is not on the table. Apparently, they refuse to do that, and
for whatever reason.
I feel bad for Jordan Love a bit because here's a guy who
here's a guy.
He's probably a second-round quarterback in terms of talent. He could have easily just been a second-round pick, made a roster spot, probably been a backup or a fringe starter somewhere, made a decent amount of money, and mostly been anonymous. And if he got good, he would be a star. Instead, he gets to be that same guy, but with a ton of unfair expectations because the Packers traded up to get him inexplicably to replace Aaron Rodgers and then have kind of put him as the wedge that's sort of driving Aaron out of town. If Rodgers leaves the Packers on account of Jordan Love, and Jordan Love is thrust into the starting role and he can't play, his name's going to be infamous, and it's not going to be because he did anything wrong. It's a shame for him, and I think it's going to get interesting as well because it's a full-on mutiny in Green Bay apparently because none of their top 5 receivers showed up to OTAs either. Like, they and Rodgers all skipped. That's not a coincidence. Like, the receivers are clearly behind Aaron here as well, especially Devontae Adams, who straight up said, if he's gone, I'm gone.
I mean, if you're Devontae Adams, right, you've seen Jordan Love play. I think the Packers have made it clear that Jordan Love's not any good. Like, he played 0 snaps last season.
He suited up for, I think, 0 games.
Yeah, unless there's just an unbelievable improvement from year 1 to year 2, which is possible. It happens, but that's a big hill to climb to go from can't even dress to being an adequate NFL starter.
Certainly not something that I'm going to go into the offseason assuming is going to happen.
Especially when the alternative is a future Hall of Famer coming off an MVP season.
Yeah.
A little bit of a drop-off here.
So some drama over a recent interview with Julio Jones, and it's gotten pretty bad. So for the backstory for anybody who is not aware, Shannon Sharp of Fox Sports Undisputed called Julio Jones live on the air on Monday and asked him if he wanted to stay in Atlanta next season. And Jones said, "I'm out of here." A lot of people, came back and were like, did Jones know that he was being called live on the air on Undisputed? Was he aware of this? And as it turns out, he was not. His representatives have reached out to Fox about the situation, said it's become a huge deal. This could get Fox Sports into a lot of trouble with the NFL, could limit their access to the Falcons and possibly to any team because, this is a trust issue. If the players and the executives and the coaches, don't feel like they're this is something that I talk to my journalism students about at the beginning of every year, like at the beginning of the year, because this is something that's really important because a lot of people don't understand what, like unnamed sources, for example, right? Anonymous sources are important, and some people don't understand that, and they want to say, oh, well, if you're, anybody can just make up an anonymous source. Like, okay, yes, that's technically true, but it's also a matter of some people won't talk to you if you don't keep them anonymous, and then we don't get information, and the public isn't aware of things that they should be privy to. It's the same reason why a lot of NFL executives will not allow people to put their names to stories. People like what's his name on Fox Sports, who's friends with Michael Strahan. That's Jay Glazer. It's like the only reason that he's on there is because he's friends with Michael Strahan. Like that's why so many of his sources are anonymous. But we know that they're reliable because time and time again, the stuff that he reports ends up being factually correct. It's a trust thing, and if I go out and I name my source in order to try and add credibility to my news story, well, that takes away trust in the people who gave that information and to anybody who might be a source in the future for me. So at that point, my career as a journalist is done. I'm not going to be able to get those sorts of stories anymore for the public. And that's why this is such a big deal that Shannon Sharp did this.
Yeah, I forget what the guy's name was. Some agent who apparently represents a good number of NFL players straight up said he retweeted the video of this happening, and he said, "This is why I don't let any of my clients interact with Fox Sports 1 and with Undisputed. Like, they call asking for appearances, things like that. It's always the answer is no, because this is pretty underhanded." And I frankly, I saw the clip a couple hours after it aired because it was lunchtime and I was like just flipping through my phone.
Sure.
And I'm like, well, Undisputed aired this morning. And I also didn't quite realize that Undisputed was taped live. I thought that it was pre-recorded to some extent. Obviously, earlier in the morning, I would have assumed, but this was live TV. And
I think a lot of times, like some of those shows are like a 1 hour show, but then it repeats for 2 hours more or less.
Yeah. This case, that didn't happen, and he's on live, and he straight up says on the cell phone, "I'm out of there." And I was like, dude, does he know he's on TV? Like, we're on live now, Shaq. Did anybody tell him that?
Yeah.
Because you probably should inform
Yeah,
the
Shaq,
guy.
we're on live. Just right quick.
Yeah, the professional athlete that you are asking for personal information probably should be aware that he's currently on television spilling his guts to the entire nation for a clip that's certainly going to go viral on the internet, which it did. And I was just like, wow. I kind of figured that Julio Jones was going to be traded just because his name's constantly coming up, and he's a bit of a cap casualty in a lot of ways anyway. The Falcons kind of need to move off of him for their own books.
The Falcons are over the cap. They can't even sign their draft picks right now.
Yes, so he's the big guy to get rid of because he's makes the most money. But it sounds like he wants out as well, so it's a mutual thing. But that just speeds up the process, and that hurts negotiations too. Because now the Falcons are like, I can't come into this with any hope of us wanting to retain him. We're not coming from, we don't want to get rid of him.
And not to mention the other teams also know that the
that's
Falcons.
The point.
Yeah,
they know it's like, okay, well, we know he wants to leave, and we know you guys are in a bit of a jam, so maybe slide us.
There's a seventh
break.
rounder.
Yeah, how about we'll give you a third instead of that first? Huh? How about that? And that turns into a big mess. I thought that this was, and you can't sit there and even act like Shannon Sharp didn't know that what he was doing was wrong. I mean, he's been in the TV industry for a long time now. He's not just a football player who got on TV last week, and even if he was, any network worth its salt would have sat down with any of their on-air talent and said, hey, here are the protocols we have to follow. We are not going to play gotcha games with players talking on live TV and play a trick on them when they're not aware.
Yeah, and so but the other thing is, not only does this, have an impact on the relationship between the NFL, its players, and Fox Sports, but Shannon Sharp could be in some legal trouble too, because California, which is where Undisputed is filmed, it's done in Los Angeles, it's a two-party consent state when it comes to phone conversations. So if Jones was not aware that it was being aired and recorded, then Sharp could face a misdemeanor charge.
Oh, dear.
I'm sure he can handle that okay, given his clout. But again, though, that's interesting, though, because I've kind of made fun of Fox Sports because all they do is talk really on their shows about the NBA and the NFL. And I always noted that I don't care what any of them have to say about the NBA because they don't air any NBA games on Fox. They don't have the rights to them, which means they're certainly not going to have the best NBA on-air talent because they have no real incentive to heavily promote the game. Because they'd be promoting people to watch ESPN and ABC and TNT, whereas football, that's where their bread is buttered. I mean,
that's how Fox became a relevant network. They just in the mid '90s, they're like, let's just get the NFL.
Yes, and if they screw up their relationship with the National Football League and they compromise that, that passage of information and that trust, they're screwed. They're gonna fall behind NBC. They're going to fall behind CBS, which also have big contracts with the NFL. ESPN's going to leave them in the dust. I mean, this is a terrible mistake. It was a great viral moment because I thoroughly enjoyed it.
It was great TV.
Yeah,
no doubt about that.
A brief moment of great TV is not worth all the fallout that's going to come from this.
Yep. Dak Prescott is back. He's at practice, participating in the first two organized team activities that the Cowboys have held, coming off of a dislocated and compound fracture in his right ankle last season against the Giants. I still remember that day because I fell asleep during the mid-afternoon game and literally woke up when it happened. Like, the first play after I woke up was that play. But Prescott's out there, and they held him out of 11-on-11 drills and the end of practice walkthrough, but he said after practice, they're just being cautious, being smart about how they bring him back, but he refused to suggest that he is limited. He says he's pretty much full go, which is great to hear. I'm excited for him to be back on the field and to see him have a good season because he was off to such a hot start in 2020, and I really want to see him have a full good season. As much as potentially sucks for my team, the team, Dak Prescott in the NFL is good for the sport.
Absolutely.
I mean, the Cowboys, like they looked like they were probably going to make the playoffs, because Dak was having an all-time great season to combat their all-time terrible defense, right? Like the games that they were winning were all sort of similar to that Falcons game where they had to score 45 points, and get a lucky bounce or two to even stay close, right? Because like if your defense gives up a touchdown every single time they're out there, your offense has to get a touchdown every single time they're out there. And Dak, I mean, they were Dak and that Cowboys offense was matching them. Despite all of Ezekiel Elliott's greased football problems.
Yeah, it's not good for him either. But yeah, having Dak in the league, just we talked about it when it happened when he got hurt. Just the level of outpouring of respect and love for Dak Prescott when he got hurt just speaks to how much the NFL values him as a player and as a person. I mean, it's always a pressure-packed situation being the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys because nobody ever shuts up about that team, especially when they're not good. So you're always the guy that's under the spotlight. Tony Romo had to deal with this among many others, and he's handled it as best as you could possibly ever do so, especially as a guy who was a fourth-round pick. He wasn't really expected to be much, and he's quickly become one of the 7 or 8 best quarterbacks in football, playing for this wild franchise that is the Dallas Cowboys with some level of dysfunction and a ton of fans and a ton of marketability and all that going on, and he's still out there just being him, and it's great. So I'm glad to hear that he's on his way back, and I think that if he's healthy, the Cowboys are probably going to win this division, maybe a little bit by default, but hey, that's the nature of the game. You can only play the people in front of you.
I mean, I think this makes it a two-team race. A lot of people are talking about the Giants being good. I'm not a believer in them. But the team and the Cowboys are clearly the best 2 teams to me. I feel like the Eagles have just completely imploded. Like they're the one team in this division that has won a championship recently, or the most recently, and it's just all fallen apart. They fired the coach. They got rid of the quarterback. Both of them, I guess, just sent them up the road. The defense went from good to bad. I think I heard they were getting rid of Zach Ertz soon. What happened? Why is it suddenly a disaster again in Philly?
Well, NFL stands for not for long, and
that is so true.
Certainly applies to the Philadelphia Eagles because they are a hot mess.
Yeah, like they slid down a telephone pole covered in Crisco or something, just right down to the bottom.
Quick side note on the Cowboys. So Jalen Smith, one of their linebackers, he's switching his jersey number from 54 to 9. We've seen a bunch of players who have decided to change their jersey numbers. The only reason I bring this up is because I found it interesting. This was the first story that I saw where it actually mentioned any player who is changing their jersey number, they're responsible to pay for all existing inventory of their number. So Jalen Smith has to pay a 6-figure sum for all of the number 54 jerseys that are out there in order to make this switch to number 9. So they're paying some big money to make these changes. Shut up, Evan.
I mean, I did note that. My attitude on this whole we were whatever the hell number we want thing has been stated for the record multiple times now. I don't like it, but hey, if you're willing to drop 6 figures to go from number 54 to number 9, I guess that's a choice you can make.
Yeah, I don't like this either. Right? I maybe I'm an old man in this regard, but I just feel like the single-digit numbers are for quarterbacks and kickers and punters. Wide receivers were numbers in the 80s, and defensive linemen 90s, offensive linemen 70s, running backs and defense backs in the 20s, stuff like that. And this just messes it all up. Right now, we don't know who anybody is. It seems kind of amateurish, right? Because in college and in high school, you can wear whatever number you want, like this now. But it seemed to me like when you get to the pros, you have to wear a legitimate number range, and that's completely out the window. There's been a lot of discussion, at least on Ravens Twitter, about how Marquise Brown is wearing number 5 now instead of 15. He was number 5 at Oklahoma, and how we can't have a guy wearing number 5 because it disrespects Joe Flacco. I'm like, I don't think Joe Flacco cares.
I don't think that he has any right to that number anyway. I mean, yeah, he won a Super Bowl, but other than that, he was not a very good quarterback.
Well,
other than winning the Super Bowl,
in his season.
Other than winning, you can't be other than winning the Super. That's not a thing, Corey. You can't be like, other than the time he won the championship, he wasn't any good.
He was also.
What are you even talking about? That's the whole point of the sports, to win the championship.
I spoke too quickly.
Yeah, and he also was the Ravens' first, and to this point, well, now with Lamar, he was their first franchise quarterback. I mean, he was the guy for them for over a decade.
What about Kyle Bowler?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh. Trent Dilfer, too, while you're at it. Vinny Testaverde. Let's just name some guys. Now, Joe Flacco was there for a long time.
Don't think I knew that Vinny Testaverde played for them, but that doesn't surprise me.
Vinny Testaverde played for everybody. Just assume he...
Except for Washington, apparently.
Yeah. But anyway, I don't care for the numbers thing. Marquise Brown, as an individual, just grates on me a bit because I think he's not a very good player, and yet he...
Maybe you should try catching the ball.
Yeah, that would be helpful for him if he wants to make
third and fourth down in Cleveland on Monday Night Football. Catch the damn ball, please.
Yes, indeed. But, whatever.
The NFL has announced a salary cap ceiling of $208 million for the 2022 season. What does that mean? Well... it doesn't necessarily mean that the salary cap is going to be $208 million. It just means that it won't be above $208 million. So
there's salary cap.
They've basically limited how much it can grow. So the salary cap decreased by about by 8% from last year to the 2021 season. And if it does go up to that ceiling of $208 million for 2022, then that would be about a 14.7% increase from this year, and would roughly put it where experts expected it would have been this year if not for COVID affecting some revenue. But the interesting thing here is that the salary cap is supposed to be, the players get a certain percentage of the league's revenue. So the cap is never set this far in advance, but to put a ceiling on it. Now, what the NFL is saying is that if revenue is so high that the salary cap would have been more than $208 million, then any extra monies would be used to basically to take care of any benefits and other things that players did not get last season because of the pandemic, which, I guess that makes sense. Like those players deserve to get those benefits. And some of those players may be out of the league. So I sort of get it from that standpoint. The players who are still in the league should still get that money. And the players that are out of it would also get their money. And the Players Association agreed to this, right? Like ultimately it would be kind of silly for us to be up here saying, oh, this is dumb, because the Players Association did agree to it. They decided this was the best thing, I guess, for the players, or at least was the best, resolution they could come to with the NFL. It was just interesting to see that. It was kind of surprising. Like, okay, they're naming the salary cap for 2022 already. Like,
yeah, that was when you brought the story up. I was like, that's strange, but I kind
of 2022.
I kind of get what they're doing, because the NBA had sort of a similar issue back in 2016 when their old TV deals expired and their new ones kicked in. And so league revenue skyrocketed. And they asked the Players Association, as a part of a negotiation, was, do you want to smoothly increase the cap in accordance with new revenue numbers, or do you just want it to jump up? And the players said, jump it up. Well, that created chaos in terms of the competitive environment because everybody was spending their extra cash. It's what allowed the Warriors to get Kevin Durant because they basically just got a huge influx of cash. So the NFL might be trying to avoid something similar where teams just have all this extra money to spend and it creates this chaotic environment where you've got star players signing to teams that are already capped out and really good or things like that. It could just be a way to sort of make it a little bit more functional.
So that screws the Ravens then, because we have no money left. And our quarterback's about to get paid.
My question going back to the NBA back in 2016, if they had chosen to go the route of, smoothly, incrementally increasing the salary cap, the players as a collective are still entitled to their revenue share. So how would that have been handled? Like, what would have happened to that money that belongs to the players?
That's something I do not know the answer to because it didn't happen.
Like, would it have just been like an even split of like that extra money just goes to everybody?
No idea. I could not tell you.
I'd be interested to know that. I might have to look that up later just for my own curiosity.
The NBA's salary cap is a soft cap anyway, so it's not like you have this amount of money to pay people. You can go over it, and you can pay a luxury tax as well. So it's not really an issue of can players get that money. They absolutely can and will. It's more of a matter of what are the rules constraining you from signing new players.
Right. The NFL has approved a new rule regarding blocking below the waist. So right now on changes of possession, so kicks, punts, and interceptions and fumbles, the rule is pretty broad as far as you can't block below the waist pretty much anywhere. Beginning this year, the rule is going to be that only within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, in front or behind it, and within 2 yards left or right of the tackle box, that is the only place on the football field, on any play, that you can block below the waist. So, what this one common occurrence that this would impact is that linemen going, splitting out to block on a screenplay cannot go low to block anymore. You got to block above the waist. And the one thing I tried to look up earlier because, obviously this is meant to be a player safety thing. How often are knee injuries attributed to low blocks? And I couldn't find any data on that. So I don't know how much this moves the needle on preventing knee injuries, but hopefully it does some. Certainly it takes away the risk on those sorts of plays. I just don't know if that's actually been something that's been an issue where people are getting their knees injured on these specific plays in the past.
I know you can't block you can't block below the waist if a guy's already engaged with another blocker.
Yes.
Right? That's an illegal chop block.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm fine with this. I don't have any issues. I guess you can't really run any sort of triple option-y type stuff, any wishbone or whatever. There's a lot of cut blocks out on the outside with that.
Yeah. And then the last piece of information for this week on the NFL is they've officially scheduled the HBCU Combine for January 28th and 29th of 2022. That will be the first combine specifically for players who are attending historically black colleges and universities. They were supposed to have the first one this past year, but because of the pandemic, it was canceled. But they will have that next year. And I mean, that's a big deal for players who are there because, we have seen plenty of players from HBCUs go on to have illustrious NFL careers. The greatest wide receiver of all time. Jerry Rice was one of them. But we did not see a single player from an HBCU get drafted in this year's NFL draft. I think only 2 were drafted last year, and they were both in the 7th round. Most HBCU players who are drafted over the past decade have been in the 6th and 7th rounds. So this will, give them a place to come in and have a combine that is dedicated specifically to them. You would love to see more of these players actually get invited to the real combine. but one step at a time. The important thing is that we're going to actually have some media around HBCUs this time around. Now, the one interesting thing is the timing, because the combine itself is typically in March sometime, or like late February, early March, thereabouts. Yeah. In fact, it might even be later in March. This will be end of January, before the Super Bowl. In fact, before the playoffs are even over, especially with the extension to the season, with the 18th week being added. But I think this is really good.
I think it's great. I think HBCUs oftentimes get overlooked. So there could be diamonds in the rough that are just not getting an opportunity.
There 100% are diamonds in the rough.
And you got if you want to have the best talent, then you have to leave no stone unturned to go find it. So that might be at a little college somewhere out in the middle of nowhere, some school I probably never even heard of. So I think this is great. I know the Ravens general manager, when he was doing his post-draft interviews or whatever, was talking about how this year they focus more on the big schools because the pandemic sort of screwed up everything. If the 31 other teams did this, then it's probably some guys at an HBCU or, some other little school somewhere that might have gotten overlooked. I think this is great.
Yeah, I agree. It's I think it's always good to get underrepresented people an opportunity, because we've talked about it here where talent is everywhere. It's just a matter of, do certain people get chances, and I think this is a good chance for a lot of people who have oftentimes been overlooked.
Yeah, and do you make the effort to find those people who have been overlooked?
Yep.
So no, I mean, a bigger pool of potential players to draw from can be nothing but good for the league as a whole.
Yeah, your league's not going to get worse for finding other players, right? Like if you go to HBCUs that you normally didn't look at and you find 0 NFL players, your league has not changed. It's just gotten this. It stays the same.
Yeah.
If you find 2 or 3 that could potentially take a spot from somebody who's worse than them, your league has gotten better. So
exactly. I think that wraps it up. That's everything we've got on here. We actually made pretty good time for as many topics as we as we want to talk about. We're under 2 hours. We'll be under 2 hours even as we go through our show closing. So happy to have Eric back in the studio in person. This is
just in the studio.
It's been too long.
Yes,
it's been too long. Episode 81 was the last time, and this is episode 145.
It's like,
how wild is that?
It's too close to 50% of the episodes.
It really is.
For my liking.
It really is.
That's weird, man. Just a quick update. The Wizards are currently trailing the 76ers by 8 points in the... Actually, make that 6 points now with 6 minutes to go in the second quarter. And the Hawks are up 7 on the Knicks early in the first quarter.
Okay.
And Trevor Bauer is pitching against the Astros tonight. Yeah, that game's on ESPN. In their game last night, the Dodgers fans took over Minute Maid Park, complete with blow-up trash cans. So,
well done, Dodgers fans.
Love it.
I do too. All right, so I want to give the first shout out tonight to our guy Sean Kennedy, friend of the show. He is getting married on Sunday. Really excited for him. Eric and I'll be heading down there. You going down Friday?
I'm going Friday.
Yep, I'll be down there Friday as well. Make a 3-day weekend of it. Everybody who is attending has been vaccinated, is also getting COVID tested this week just to be on the safe side. They'll have masks for us, so I guess we'll wear some masks, which I'm cool with. Whatever.
Hopefully it matches our tuxes. I imagine it probably will.
I would imagine so.
Interesting.
That's and if
cool.
we don't have to wear masks during it, then we'll have a cool mask to take home, because I know that they got us masks. So that'll be really cool.
I even shaved my beard for the expectation that I wouldn't necessarily be wearing a mask, but that's okay. I'm cool with it.
Yeah, either way.
That's better than any of the cheesy groomsmen get-ups that I've seen on social media, right? The matching underwear or whatever. What did you do?
Wearing silly socks, so don't get a...
Yes, we'll be wearing silly socks.
I'll make sure
might have overboogied on that.
I'll be wearing the office socks.
the hell are the Office socks?
Like from like The Office.
Does it just say The Office on them, or is it
No.
characters?
So mine are Schrute Farms.
Oh, nice. There you go.
Yeah, no, so that'll be fun. But yeah, so big shout out to our guy. He's been on once or twice on the show before, and good friend of the show, listens regularly. So
He doesn't write in
congratulations.
regularly.
And of course, thank you for allowing Eric and me to be a part of the wedding as groomsmen. Really looking forward to that. Evan will be there virtually in
Yes,
attendance.
I bought a tuxedo T-shirt.
Excellent.
So
Excellent.
yeah,
Always good.
like what do you wear to a Zoom wedding? Never. I have no idea. A tuxedo
T-shirt, no pants. That's all you need.
Yeah.
Sweet.
And Evan, you'll be in Chicago during that because you are going to watch some games, some home games for the White Sox and the Cubs.
Yes, the White Sox and Cubs are both at home. I am fully vaccinated. The microchip will be fully installed on Friday, just in time for me to get on an airplane. So
just in time for Bill Gates to watch you Zoom all the way across the country, or halfway across.
Yes,
anyway.
even though I bought a plane ticket and a hotel with a credit card.
Yes, he's going to use the microchip to track you, not those
the
things.
microchip in my arm. Exactly. So hopefully the Orioles don't lose by too much. I paid the same amount for tickets at Guaranteed Rate Field and Wrigley Field, but there's quite a discrepancy in the seat location.
Oh, really?
Of equally priced tickets.
Okay, so where are you in each stadium?
So at Wrigley, I am up at the top, hopefully not behind a pole.
What part of the field? Like right field, left field, behind home plate?
Right in I guess behind first base.
Okay.
But up at the top.
And where are you at Guaranteed Rate?
I think behind home plate, the lower level.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So we might be able to see you if we're watching. Maybe not quite that low, or.
I don't think it's quite that low. I didn't want to sit that low, but I'm like, you know what? I'm on vacation. Go ahead and spend the money and get the good seats.
Absolutely. Well, good for you. That should be a fun trip for you.
Hopefully,
if not later this summer, then at least by next year we can all take a trip together to catch some baseball games at some other parks.
We're going to the draft next year, baby. Vegas.
Yeah, we got to figure out our plans for that. That'll be a lot of fun. Go to Vegas.
Should buy the tickets now. Why not?
Try and figure out how we're going to do a live stream during that.
That's not.
Yeah,
that's not.
We would be floating in the Bellagio fountain too, just like off to the side somewhere.
But yeah, no, that'll be a lot of fun. So, any shout outs from you guys before we wrap things up?
I already gave mine earlier to Kenny Mayne, as we discussed earlier. So, again, shout out to him. Good luck with whatever comes next.
Evan?
I can't think of anybody right now. Yeah, nobody comes to mind.
All right.
So.
Well, then let's go ahead and put a button on episode 145. If you've listened this far, then hopefully that means you liked what you heard. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on whichever platform you're listening on. If you're on Facebook, make sure you like our page if you haven't already done so. You can also find our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Amazon, all the major ones. If you use a podcast service that we are not on, let us know. We can work on getting us on that platform. But hit the subscribe button. Leave us some feedback. If your platform doesn't allow you to, hit us up on Twitter at SportsBallers18. You can let us know what you think. You can let us know what topics you'd like to hear us discuss on future shows, either on there or at our email address, thesportsballers@gmail.com. It's been pretty quiet since NFL season. Hopefully it'll pick back up. You can also find us individually on Twitter. I'm at Cory Puffett. Eric is at Quagmire67, and Evan is at Evan_Ash13. I think that pretty much wraps things up. So thank you all for listening and tuning in, and we will be back with you with another episode next week. See ya.